an inspiration to many people in her travels and in her moving of energy, and in the conservation movement in particular, inspiring African American Black communities in the United States to connect to natural and green space. She's, to me, it's like she's broken laws and created laws. And, and it's been a blessing to participate in the Mosaic in Motion with her. We did several festivals together with another mentor of mine and a wonderful sister of hers, Iantha Gant-Wright. And her husband is on today, Kenneth. And I believe Kenneth is in DC or Maryland. What's up, Inspector? Welcome to the circle.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm actually in Maryland, in National Harbor.
Wonderful.
So Audrey is, she's been married to Frank Peterman, her fellow adventurer, her beloved, and a mentor as well. And known them since I was 21-year-old wannabe bird nerd in South Florida. And she's a grandmother to 20 kids and a great-grandmother to 5. And she's been traveling the world and traveling natural spaces for many years. Welcome, Audrey.
Thank you so much, Francisco. Thank you so much, Salim, and the Sangha Synergy team. I feel very privileged to be allowed this opportunity to speak with you. And I'm so happy that people from all over the globe have joined. What a beautiful home you have created for us to interact with each other, to share experiences, and hopefully to inspire each other in this quite unprecedented time that we're experiencing. And I'm very interested in hearing how people are dealing with the issues of confinement and not being able to see their loved ones necessarily. And, you know, I feel very fortunate that the pandemic caught Frank and I in Jamaica. In fact, we had just returned from Florida at the end of February. And we are right now living in a space that I consider a prototype of the Garden of Eden in Jamaica. It's in the countryside, and we are privileged to live on the property of a dear friend from high school. So Frank jokes about the fact that we have 4 acres for 4 people, and I'm so grateful for that sense of space. I'm really grateful that I can tell you, I can walk out my door and go pick up a couple of mangoes, and like right now, go pick up some plums, go pick up some cherries. It's like, literally, it's so beautiful to be here. And I would wish that everyone had a place as spacious and wonderful as this. But if one doesn't, that's why the fact of public parks, you know, is so essential and so wonderful. Because the parks belong to all of us, and all of us can and should be able to find our space in nature, in national, state, county, local parks, your backyard park. So one way that I have found to really ground myself in this time when everything around us and so much around us seems to be out of control and unpredictable is by attaching myself to those things that are permanent, such as the sun. My bedroom window faces east. So every morning at sunrise, for the last 3 months or so, I have made a point when the first fingers of the sun touches the window and wakes me up, I get dressed and I run outside and I stand in front of the sunrise. And I see the sunbeams coming down, and I actually feel like I pull one down over myself. And I walk in the shadow of that sunbeam all day. I walk with it sheltering me. And I know that as the sun will rise tomorrow, or as the earth will make her way, you know, revolve and follow the sun, those things are permanent. Those things happen outside of our volition. And yet, if they did not happen, none of us could be here. So just in making that my daily ritual, I really have been able to reduce the effects of stress and anxiety that are really preponderant in this time. So I hope that each one of you has been able to establish some practice or some routine that keeps you connected to the larger reality of life and not so much to the minutia of, the change in daily events. Although, of course, I have to say I am grounded in those as well, because as an advocate for people and parks, I am very grounded in the politics of it. But while I cannot physically go to Capitol Hill now, I make sure that I'm aware of what all the events are, what all the things are that I need to reach out to my elected officials about. And more than that, I try to send a message of peace and tranquility to all the people, in my social media feed, and just all the people out there, to remind them that this too shall pass. But today, what I signed up to do is to take you on a walk through the parks. And I can tell you, I can't even count the number of state parks I've been to, but I have been to 185 units of America's national park system. And that might sound like a lot, but actually there are more than 420 in the system, so I have a long way to go. I know that wherever you are, in Kenya, in Switzerland, wherever you are, there's national parks, there are state parks, they were instituted to protect nature and to protect history. So I hope that you are able to take full advantage of them. But to tell you the truth, I did not even know anything about parks when I married Frank. It was after that blessed event that we decided to take a trip around America and go and get ourselves familiar with those places that we'd only heard of or read about that are so fabulous. Places like the Grand Canyon, Yosemite, Yellowstone. And we knew that millions of people come from all over the world to see those places. So we were like, wait a minute, we can drive to them, and yet we don't. So why don't we? So we decided to take a couple of months out of our lives, and we bought a truck, we bought a tent, we bought some cooking gear and some sleeping bags, and we took off from Florida, from the Atlantic coast, and drove all the way across and up and over and around the country to the Pacific coast and back. And that was the most life-altering 12,500 miles of our lives. First of all, we had only been married 3 years. And so if you're married to somebody 3 years and you're stuck in the cab of a truck with them for 2 months, you really come to find out whether or not you like them. And we found out that we really liked each other a lot. And hey, now it's 20-something years later, so that was a good thing. But the other life-altering thing that we found is the first big place that we stopped was Acadia in Maine. And Acadia is on the Atlantic coast. And it's a very exotic location because you come into town, and the town of Bar Harbor, where Acadia is spread out, and there are all these beautiful white buildings gleaming in the sun. And then as you proceed through town, you come to the base of this incredible mountain called Cadillac Mountain. And the mountain is fringed with greenery, a green forest. And on the other side is the ocean, right? So we drive into the park, and we're driving up in our Ford F-150 truck, and we're driving up Cadillac Mountain. And we're going up and up and up. And now suddenly we're above the clouds. We're looking down at the clouds, and all these vehicles are hurtling down around us. But then when we get deposited at the top of the mountain, it was the most unearthly scene that I could never even have pictured if I'd tried for my whole life. Because from the top of the mountain, on one side, you could see the Atlantic Ocean thundering down below. And on the other side, there were these placid water body. And within them, there were all these tree islands. And the light from the sun was turning the water golden around them, like molten gold. And the whole expanse was so ensconced in beauty that I felt, oh my God, I felt like somebody who had lived in a mansion my entire life. And until then, all I had seen was a kitchen. And I often say I really love the kitchen because it's serviceable, it's where you make the food, and I love to eat. But here I was suddenly deposited in the grand drawing room, in the living room, you know, a place that's dedicated to art and beauty and the upliftment of the soul. I was totally blown away. And I tell people that in that place, I fell in love with myself. And if you have not had the experience of falling in love with yourself, I hope it happens to you soon. And probably you can help facilitate it by being out in nature. And when I say I fell in love with myself, I mean that in looking out at the entire expanse of beauty, untouched by human hand, I suddenly realized, wait a minute, the same thing that made this made me. And as that is perfect and beautiful, I must be too. And so I felt so infinitesimal and yet so grand, so connected with everything. And I have never lost that feeling of being in love with myself and finding myself so beautiful and perfect. And here's the other part of that. I see everything and everyone else as beautiful and perfect too. So I swear, I walk down the street like Little Miss whatever, smiling at everybody I meet, because I know that we are one. We are part of the one. And that experience happened in 1995, and it has never left me. It was only very much later that I realized that that place, Acadia, was actually part of the national park system. But I did not know that until I had, in fact, gone to parks such as the Badlands National Park in South Dakota. And the Badlands National Park, you know, if you have ever seen a cowboy movie, you know that many of these rugged, cinematesque landscapes are known as the Badlands. And those places are still out there in America. You can still go out and see them relatively untouched. And so in the Badlands, I had the very strange experience of seeing pyramids and temples, just like the pyramids and temples in Egypt or in South Central America, and they were made out of earth. It was, the earth had gathered up itself into pyramids and exquisite temples and shapes in all kinds of colors. Oh my, I can't even describe to you. I wish I could describe to you how beautiful it is, but it's there, it's mesmerizing, and it's there for you to see at your leisure, similar to the national parks or the state and public parks that you can see in the region where you live. So we continued to Mount Rushmore, and I have to tell you, I was not as impressed with Mount Rushmore as I might have been, because I saw the imposition of these white faces on the mountains as well as an imposition. It was as if the mountains were perfect before the faces were carved there. But I appreciate that that is a construct in American history. And then, of course, we went on to Yellowstone. Wow! I'd always heard of Yellowstone and Old Faithful Geyser, and I thought that was the only geyser there. How was I to know that Yellowstone contains half of all the geysers on planet Earth? Unbelievably beautiful. There's a geyser there, a pool named the Prismatic Pool, and it's yellow and blue and green. And now the rangers and researchers are actually finding that there are biologicals, there are things in that pond that can actually have an effect in curing cancers. But I wasn't that concerned about that while I was in Yellowstone. The real shocking realization for me in Yellowstone was when I saw the word National Park behind Yellowstone. I was like, wait. Then I remember that in Acadia, I had seen Acadia National Park. In Badlands, I'd seen Badlands National Park. Now in Yellowstone, I'm seeing Yellowstone National Park. I was like, what the heck is a national park? And so later when I found out that there's a whole system of national parks around America, one in every state and multiple in multiple states, I was like, wow, I was hooked for life. And I can tell you that continuing from Yellowstone on up to Yosemite National Park, wow, probably, well, certainly among the most spectacular units in America's national park system. Continuing to Olympic National Park in Washington State. Wow. I never knew that there was a rainforest in America until I was in Olympic and visited the whole rainforest. And walking on the Pacific shores where there are actually signs saying, trees kill, was a really surreal experience because really, how do trees kill? But they were referring to the fact that the current can undercut some of the root systems of these big trees, and then the current takes them out to sea and can land them back on the shores in a very dramatic and potentially harmful way. So from Olympic, then we went to Sequoia. Yes, we went to Sequoia and walked among the giant Sequoia trees and learned for the first time that those trees that are more than 2,000 years old, so they were actually alive at the time when Jesus was on earth, because I think we date AD from around the time of Jesus. And many of these trees are more than 2,000 years old. And we were able to walk among them and touch them. I had such reverence. And then I discovered that that park in particular is germane to American history and to the history of African Americans, because it was the fabled Buffalo Soldiers who protected Sequoia and Kings Canyon and Yosemite National Parks at the turn of the 20th century, when the military was in charge of the national park system before the park system, the Park Service itself was formed. So coming back down through the Great Smoky Mountains to the Blue Ridge Parkway, eventually going to Everglades National Park in Florida, my course was set, and Frank's course was set, when we recognized that there were so few people of color among the thousands of employees and visitors in these places. We literally counted them on one hand. Frank says he saw 2 Black people. I saw 4, so I was ahead of him by double. And the experience, the excitement, the sense of freedom and liberation that we had felt in the national parks made us want to share that experience with everyone, with everybody in the world, and most especially with the people in America that look like us, that we felt so much needed the experience of feeling free. Because as both the situation of the virus is showing us and the situation of the protests from these police killings in America, the fire that has been lit around the world, all of these things are revealing to us how unequal society has been all around the world. And so in 1995, after that experience, seeing the beauty and splendor of the parks, seeing how we could connect to God, however we conceive God to be, feeling so elevated, we decided to make it our mission to share that knowledge with others like ourselves and all other people. And that's where Francisco came in, because we began working with the National Audubon Society to help restore the Florida Everglades. And as a result of that, when Francisco was moving to Washington, D.C., we were able to introduce him to our beloved friend, Ayanta Gant-Wright, who has now made her transition, but who was at that time the cultural diversity director of the National Parks Conservation Association. And she was the foremost leader, I call her the fulcrum, in helping people connect to the national parks. And as Francisco mentioned, when we opened, we had several conferences across the country, in San Francisco, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in Atlanta, Georgia, to really, wait a minute, is that Is that one, Rodriguez? Is that one Martinez? No.
Yeah, one just joined in.
One. Hi. Please forgive me, everyone. But
You,
one is to
everyone.
understand like Francisco, and we were all engaged in this work together. It's been so wonderful. And one was cited as the National Geographic Young Explorer in 2000. I'm not sure 2000 what date, but definitely. Yes, and he's been doing such wonderful work. So I don't want to hug the show. I'd much rather we have a conversation. But if Salim, if you would show the
Slideshow.
yes, the images, I'd be most appreciative. Right. So this slide is of the Milky Way galaxy. And it was taken in the Badlands National Park in 2012 at a night when we had an astronomy festival. I was actually there the night that picture was taken. And it is the most surreal feeling on Earth, for me anyway, to know that you're in the Milky Way galaxy and yet you can stand and look at it outside of yourself. And whenever I have the opportunity to make a presentation, I often use it as my opening slide to make the point to people, you know, all of us humans are out here on a small planet, in a small galaxy, in a distant corner. In a small solar system, in a distant corner of the Milky Way galaxy. None of us knows how we got here. None of us knows when or how we will leave. I am reminded that some people who have tried to leave early have, really disfigured themselves and had to live with the consequences of that. So I just remind people that we all live in the same place. Our fate is bound up together. And all of the things that we have created to separate ourselves and distance ourselves from each other, they are all artificial. They have no meaning and no energy except what we give them. And really, we all are one. And the sooner that we recognize that and try to cling to the reality that we're all in the same boat, moving towards the same destiny, the better our future will be. Next slide, Celine. Aha. Okay, so this is a sunrise I took from my backyard a couple of days ago, and I so love it. It's my sun salute. You see that sunbeam that's coming right out of it? That's the sunbeam I draw. Whatever the sunbeam is coming out of the sun, I draw that over myself like a cloak, and I walk in it all day in the consciousness that I am not just a physical body, but I'm mind, body, and spirit. And that the sun reminds me, as the earth turns and I see the sun appearing at different places over the mountains, I remind myself the sun is forever here. I am attached to that. It is part of me. I am part of it, as we all are, and the solar system that it serves. Next one, Celine. Our little blue bauble. I've had the opportunity to talk to a bunch of, actually 4 astronauts who've been in outer space, and they all emphasize how at a certain point in orbit, they can just put their thumb over the window of the space shuttle and it obscures the entire planet. Think about that. That's how small and connected we are. Next one. Next slide, Celine. The Grand Canyon. To me, the Grand Canyon, this is the south rim of the Grand Canyon National Park. And it's kind of like the mother lode because it's one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. And it's the one that we have in American soil. I know that there are 6 others around the world. And maybe as we're talking later, you have a natural wonder of the world in your backyard that you'd like to talk about. So beautiful. You have to go to, if you live in America and you haven't been to the Grand Canyon, you are really missing a lot. And I urge you to redress that as fast as you can. Next slide, Celine. Oh yeah, okay, so I was at the Grand Canyon. I love to be at the Grand Canyon. I've been like 10 times. I can't stop going. Next slide. Yes, oh, can you believe the scenery? I don't know how many people have seen it, but that's Bryce Canyon National Park in Utah. And this is just one slice of the hoodoos that as far as your eye can see, that's what the scenery looks like. And it is said that the native peoples used to hurry through that place because they felt that there were great supernatural powers that lived there. And I have read that scientists have found that some of the animals that live in that space are able to communicate such specifics to each other as behind you, tall, human. Imagine that. There's so much more in the world than we know and understand. So much left for us to discover. So much for us to enjoy. And this, I can assure you, is one of the most beautiful and ethereal places on earth for you to go enjoy yourself. Next one, Celine. Yes, this is the Grand Tetons National Park. And this is a lake in Grand Tetons National Park, but the primary feature of the Grand Tetons in Wyoming is the Grand Teton Mountains. And I know that if or when Juan Martinez has an opportunity to speak, he might tell us about the transformation that he experienced in the Grand Teton National Park. But I have to tell you, the Grand Teton is a solid wall of 7 huge mountains, and there's one in the middle, the Royal Teton. Every time I've seen it, and I must have seen it 5 or 6 times, it always has a wisp of cloud around its head. It's just, those mountains are called the Oh My God mountains because they are so dramatic that when you see them, the first thing that comes to your lips is, oh my God. Yes, like that. Grand Tetons National Park. And if you're going to go on a national park tour, I always encourage people to take in both the Grand Teton and Yellowstone because they're only about 100 miles from each other. Yes, Celine, the next one, please. Yellowstone. Yes, that's the great Old Faithful, and lots of people ringing the geyser. It goes off so predictably. And one of the things that fascinated me about Yellowstone and the Old Faithful region is some of the largest animals on earth have made this place their home since time immemorial. The bison are there, grizzly bears, right? And yet in some places, the earth is barely as thick as a potato chip. It's uncanny and amazing and unbelievable in so many ways. You ought to go see it. And the water from the Old Faithful geyser tends to leap up into the air like 150 feet or more. Steaming hot water, scalding hot. Very, very amazing to see. Next one, Celine. Well, I had to add this in there just because, you know, for color. You can move on to the next one, Celine. Oh, yes. This is Zion National Park in Springdale, Utah. And I can tell you, this park, Frank says it has a spiritual experience on him because he can feel it even before he sees it. When we went there and we were camping and he was trying to put the 10 stakes into the ground, I heard him grunting. He said, the ground is so resistant. The energy is so strong. The ground resists intrusion. And I can tell you, I have seen sunrise and sunset in this place that you just have to see because it's indescribable. Because the mountains are so high in the east and in the west. So when you only see the sun when it leaps over the cliffs in the east in the mornings, and there's sunrise. There's no gradual sunrise. It's boom, and it's there. And when the sun goes down in the afternoons, suddenly, boom, it goes over the western walls and it's gone. But this park is just so phenomenal. And when we took our family there, including our son, who is a minister, he was very impressed by the fact that it's so spiritual. And many of the monuments and the monoliths, the natural monuments, by the way, and the monoliths have names such as the court of the pharaohs, Abram, and Jacob. I can't remember their names exactly now, but it's certainly a national park, very much, and an area very much worth visiting, you will certainly come back from it transformed in some way. Next one, please. Oh, yes. This is a shot from the Rocky Mountains National Park. So beautiful, so mountainous, so beautiful and wonderful. And these young people are part of a group called Green and Youth Foundation, and they were doing their training and internship in Rocky Mountains National Park. And I can't even tell you how beautiful, you know, the contrast between the mountains and the meadows and the wildlife. It's so ethereal. You just have to experience it for yourself. Or if you can't experience the Rocky Mountains, you can certainly experience a natural place, a special place, a preserved, set aside place in your neighborhood or in your nation. Yes, next one, please, Celine. Yes, what a privilege to be able to share this one. This is from my other favorite national park, Denali National Park in Alaska. And this is a team of young Black mountaineers who attempted to summit that mountain, Mount Denali, which is the highest mountain on the North American continent. They did that in 2013. And the gentleman in the blue parka, Stephen Shobe, who led the expedition, is actually not so young. I think he's about 60, in his early 60s now. And he had already summited 3 of the other highest mountains on planet Earth. And just at 700 feet below the summit, unfortunately, the weather turned so bad that they had to get down without reaching the summit. So they're going to have to go back and do it all over again. Next one, Celine. But this is how I experienced Denali, since I'm not a mountaineer, okay? I could just stay down there on the level and hug up with my sweetie and look at the mountain in the background. That's an experience available to everyone. That was at Camp Denali in Denali National Park. Next one, please. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I mentioned the giant sequoias in Sequoia National Park, California. And I mentioned that those giant sequoias now that are visited annually by more than 1 million people from all over the globe were protected by the Buffalo Soldiers, with Colonel Charles Young being the leader of that detail. And they were so effective in building a road into the giant forest and helping preparing the way so that other Americans who had more power and more influence, but who required more luxury, could come up there and experience the giant sequoias and go back and lobby Congress to expand the parks. And so really it's a tribute to the Buffalo Soldiers that we have the sequoias in Sequoia National Park. And those sequoias being more than 2,000 years old. And the Buffalo Soldiers had to protect the parks from people who wanted to graze their cattle among them and who wanted to cut them down to make so many board feet of lumber. So today we can be grateful to the Buffalo Soldiers for having preserved these very special specimens of timeless earth for us. Next one, please, Celine. Next one, next one. Yes, okay, so this is a shot of Yosemite National Park. We're in front of Half Dome. I'm sorry you can't quite see the dome, but that is one of the most striking parks in the national park system. And in fact, I'm told that this is one of the places where the theory of manifest destiny took hold in America, because Europeans, seeing that incredibly splendid place, decided that God must want them to dominate the whole country from coast to coast because he had given them such a land. You know, the stories that we concoct to tell ourselves to justify what we do. Moving on, Salim. I couldn't resist this picture because, as I told you, this is in Acadia National Park, and this is on top of Cadillac Mountain. And see how the water looks like it's just down there, like you could reach out and touch it, but it's actually several hundred feet below. And my friend was taking a picture of me while a friend of ours took a picture of him. But I heartily recommend Acadia National Park if you get a chance to travel to the parks in the United States. Next one, Celine. Aha, this is Upmulgee And it's a unit of the National Park System in Macon, Georgia. And this place is where the Muskogee Creek natives believe that they came out of the belly of the earth into the world. And there are artifacts in this place, in the site, that go back 17,000 years. And it's interesting because you can go on top of the pyramid, you can walk on top of it. And when I walk on top of it and I look across to the city of Macon with its concrete intensity, I am reminded that the people who came before us, left so much of the earth untrammeled. I wonder, I'm curious about what we're going to leave, what's going to be left when we pass on. Next one, please. Oh, we're coming down to 10 minutes, so we have to make time to talk. Oh, this is my beloved friend, Tanya Cummings, and she's in the Blue Ridge Parkway, which I wanted to show you. But please go on, Celine. Let's just move through these because this is Everglades National Park in Florida. And I was astonished and amazed to learn that the Everglades was actually part of the National Underground Railroad to Freedom that enslaved Africans fled from Georgia and other places north and actually lived in the swamp. They lived among the Seminole Indians. In fact, the word Seminole means run away. They ran away to take their freedom. And when I am in this park and I look at the noxious, the alligators and the snakes and the creatures that live in the swamp, and I know that my ancestors braved those places to find freedom, I am re-energized in the struggle, or rather in the striving for the freedom of all humanity in America and in the world. Next one, please, Celine. Yes, this guy. President Obama came to the to Everglades National Park in 2015, I believe it was, to talk about climate change and also to talk about the fact that he was designating the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas House as part of the National Park System. And Marjorie Stoneman Douglas was instrumental in raising awareness about the plight of the Everglades and in helping to get it protected. You see the Nhinga over his head? I just think that's a great talisman. On, please, Celine. Yes, and people don't go to the parks to be political. We go to have fun. But these young children who were in the park the day that President Obama was there certainly got to have a good time. I'm certain they'll remember that forever. On to the next one, Celine. Oh, yes, I got to meet, oh my goodness. This is one of the high points of my life, I have to say. On to the next one, Celine. Yes, so I would say a milestone in our efforts to make the national parks in America and the entire public land system better known, loved, and cherished by the American people came about in January 2017 when we were able to persuade President Obama on his way out the door to issue a presidential memorandum promoting diversity in the national parks and public lands and waters, and providing guidance and direction to the managers of our public land system of how they should go about integrating the public lands. There's over 630 million acres of public lands in America that belong to the American people, that are supported by our tax dollars, that are there to be our education, our rejuvenation, our refreshment. But a lot of people don't get to enjoy that. My big hope coming out of the pandemic is that people will be so tired after being cooped up at home that they will be looking for adventures and they will flock to the great outdoors and find the welcome that they deserve in the national parks and public land system, where they can be free to experience and to express themselves and to know that they are part of God and part of the world in exactly the same way as every human being is. There's no lesser and no greater. Next one, please, Celine. Oh, yes, and then I came home to Jamaica and we have the amazing Blue Mountain National Park, which I'm getting very, very connected to. Next one, Celine. Yes, this is the place in Jamaica where I was born. Well, it's the gully that I write about in my book. I just finished writing the book. It took me 3 months to write my life story about growing up in Jamaica and about my work in the environmental sector. So the next one, please, Salim. I think that's the cover of the book. Yes, from my Jamaican gully to the world. So I put all my beautiful experiences in there, and I emphasize that it was my formative years in nature that gave me such a love and a lust for nature that has taken me throughout my whole life and allows me to be happy even in the most dire circumstances, because I know as long as there's nature, nature will not fail us. We just have the need and the requirement to respect her and take care of her in the way she takes care of us. And with that, I'm done. And hopefully now we can have some time to talk about what people are experiencing or what people are interested in talking about.
Salim, could you put it into the grid mode so that we can see all the faces and interact?
Faces.
Beautiful. Juan, I see Neil.
Yes, Juan. Hi, Juan.
Let me see. Let me unmute.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Audrey. Hi, Francisco. Just a heads up, I'm in a car at the minute, but I'll be on video here in a couple.
Okay, no worries.
All good, brother. So Audrey, right now we open it up to questions. Anyone have any questions for Audrey? Thank you so much.
Or a statement, or talk about how you're dealing with the pandemic, or how you're feeling, how you're coping.
I have a quick something.
Oh, you go first. I'll go after you. Sorry.
So I think that your vision and your hope is coming true already.
Really?
Last weekend was our daughter's birthday, and we went down to the Crabtree Falls, which is in the George Washington National Forest in sort of southwestern Virginia.
Yes.
And I became very, I guess, aware of diversity issues in the parks while I was at NPCA, and joined you down in Atlanta for the conference.
Yes.
I've become much more aware of and attuned to who's in these places and who's visiting. And I was so thrilled and heartened by the constituency of folks who I saw on our hike. It's probably not quite a 2-mile hike each way in and out of Crabtree Falls. And there was incredible diversity. Very, very heartening to me to see how many different people were out enjoying nature. There were probably too many of us, frankly. There was not a whole lot of social distancing on the trail. But African Americans and Latinos and folks from East India, I mean, it was amazing to me and so rewarding.
You made my day. Thank you, Neil. Thank you. Yes, somebody else had a comment?
Oh, I just wanted to say what you said about the sunrise was very beautiful, and I appreciate that so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. My husband says I'm way out there on a cloud, and I'm like, well, why not? I can. I have that choice.
Hi, Audrey. This is Ken out in Oxon Hill, Maryland. I just wanted to say that your excitement and enthusiasm and your passion about the park is just so uplifting and so, well, it connects me to my wife because you two shared that passion. And I got to tell you, too, that I know I've made plans to come down there as soon as they lift everything and we can move about.
Yes, we're expecting you.
Yeah, but the way you described Arcadia National Park, that might be my first journey. I want to go there and fall in love with me, find myself. So we may have to put your trip on hold, and then afterwards, we can share experiences even more. Thank you. I love you, dear.
All time, my brother, all time. And I have to tell you, well, everybody, I'd like you to know that Ayanta's wife, Kenny's wife, Ayanta, she and I meditated every morning for 20 years. And so now that she's no longer with us, every morning in my devotions and decree, she had the most beautiful voice and she loved to sing a cappella, especially How Great Thou Art. So every morning in my meditation and devotions, I visualize her singing in Archangel Gabriel's choir, a cappella. I keep her with me. She was so instrumental to the movement.
You read my mind, Audrey. I was gonna ask you because I remember like her office was like right next to where I sat, and you know, and I just watching her come out of your morning meditations every day.
Yes.
You know, so I was gonna ask you just about your morning meditations actually, and how they helped ground you and focus you together, because you guys were very deeply together in this.
Yes. Well, one of the great things is that we have a series of decrees. There's a book we studied called The Science of the Spoken Words. And we used to actually memorize these decrees, which are supposed to be words in a particular order that really bring a certain energy to you. So in the mornings when I'm outside, welcoming the sun, pulling my sunbeam over me and giving those decrees, I just really have a strong vision of the world in harmony. And I hold that vision every day and I give it my energy because, you know, the world is what we make it. And so my goal and desire and drive always is to make the world the perfect place it was intended to be. So whatever I can contribute, and I have to tell you a funny thing. You know how we can be so indisciplined, right? So sometimes when the first gleam of the sun touches my window, I don't want to get up. And I'm like, oh, I don't have to go today. I could just lie here today. And then I remember, you know, if you had an appointment with President Obama, would you go back to bed? No? Okay. Well, you have an appointment with God. You can't go back to bed. And I jump out of bed and I go, and it really centers me for my whole entire day. The fact that I have made that connection, established that connection, that I'm not just, you know, a physical body moving through time and space. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Audrey, for the presentation. Really beautiful. And I agree, your energy and exuberance is definitely, I live close to the Arboretum. I'm here in Nairobi. I'm a 10-minute walk from the Arboretum, and that's where I go these days. Yeah, it's a really beautiful Arboretum. We have monkeys there, and it's lovely. It's not a huge space. But actually my question, so first, thank you for the presentation, really beautiful. And I loved your words and reflections on the experiences as well, were very impressionable for me. So I wanted to ask about, there's this piece, yes, of course, about having experiences in the national park. And then I'm also interested though in maybe if you have a vision, or you could share your vision about the integration of natural spaces into urban areas as well. And what that might look like. I know, obviously urban farming has kind of come into the conversation in the last couple decades. But yeah, if you could share kind of your vision, or kind of what some ideas around what we can be thinking about in terms of integrating nature back into the city more as well.
Yes, well, you know, my vision is holistic, right? It starts from my inside out. And then, of course, I presume that that's how other people experience the world, but I don't know. So I have one biological daughter who lives in Atlanta. I think she's on the score. And that young lady, to my knowledge, has never taken up an implement to till the ground, the soil. And yet now I'm having to call her Farmer Lisa because she has gotten into, you know, growing vegetables and food on her property in her backyard. And I mentioned Atlanta in particular because Atlanta is a place that I think that this integration is going on, where the city parks and the state parks and the pocket parks, the small open space areas are very much inculcated into the panorama that the park leaders give to the people. Okay, so you might not be able to go to Chattahoochee National Forest, right? But you can go to Cascade Springs in your backyard. There are people who are specializing and focusing on producing healthy food. There's lots of people of color working now on recapturing our history in farming. So I think that I know that there's a place in Atlanta called Wonderland Gardens where that's going on. But in totality, the leaders I find in Atlanta are busy integrating all acreage, you know, into the public space dialogue and into making sure that people know these places are available for your recreation and your rejuvenation. So I think that's definitely the way of the present and future.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Audrey, this is Danny. I'm also speaking from Nairobi. No, actually, I'm speaking from Naivasha, but it's in not far from Nairobi.
Wow.
So yeah, here in Kenya, we have some beautiful spaces, some absolutely amazing national parks. So I want to invite you to come over. I think there's some amazing spots that you
got
can
it.
visit.
Don't invite me. I'm coming, okay?
But the problem, I think the problem that we have here. By the way, I love your talk. I love your photos. Love your vision.
Thank you.
But the problem we face here, I think, is the lack of diversity, maybe in the people that visit a lot of the parks. It's very geared to around so high-end tourism. It's very geared towards people with a huge amount of money. So what I find is, and me and my girlfriend have been exploring actually during the COVID period and doing a bit of camping, but it's just too overpriced for a lot of local Kenyans to go and visit. So that's why I was saying we need someone like you to bring a bit of diversity into into how people can explore and experience the parks there.
Thank you. And I'm interested in how much, the long-term health and sustainability of a place can be assured if the local people are not invested in it, So I would think that you have every incentive to invest, to invite the local people in, create programs or avenues for them to enjoy the park or the resources without necessarily having to have all that money. Because ultimately, the tourists couldn't come now, right? But you could have the local people.
And this is why suddenly it's opening up the parks, I think, for more people to visit at this time because they're dependent on the local population. But I think there's a lot tied up in the old kind of colonial system whereby, the white-owned farms, the way that they kept the land in the post-colonial system was to sort of turn them into conservation areas. So all the conservation that goes on in these, a lot of these huge conservancies, they're doing some great work for wildlife, but it's very much kind of white-owned, white-driven, for very high-end tourism. So it's definitely an issue that has to be addressed here to bring, more kind of Kenyan expertise, Kenyan conservationists, and the Kenyan population into these parks to enjoy them.
Yes, and I'm certainly hoping that the upheaval that is now going on in the world, where ultimately we could come to a more egalitarian world, which, my God, we so need, right? I am hoping that the ultimate end result of all of this is that each person will be considered an equal individual with an equal share in the world. Because, I often say to people, hey, did you ever see a baby born with a back pocket full of money? Nobody came here with anything. How did the world get to be so segmented into the haves and the have-nots? We did that, and it doesn't serve us, so we can undo it. That's why I like to show that picture of the Milky Way galaxy. None of the current constructs that we live by, are natural. We all came here and saw everything here. So presumably everything here is for everybody here. Duh. Certainly that's the way I think about it.
Thank you, Audrey. And please come to Kenya and come and experience the parks. You will love it.
I will most happily. Thank you.
This is Brian. Rollins up in Jacksonville, not too far from Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, wow. Hi, how are you?
And I really loved your presentation. And you're a
Thank
poet.
you.
You're a poet, obviously.
Whoa, thank you. Coming from you, that means a lot. Thank you.
Well, and your descriptions are just beautiful, and your pictures and your passion
Thank you so
is just magnetic. My wife, it was like, so my wife Shirley and I have consulted with the National Park Service on diversity issues.
Excellent.
And we've worked at the Tuskegee and Selma and Horseshoe Bend and around and up at Kingsley. And so we see the same opportunity for the expansion and the involvement of people of color up in those environments. And we are concerned because we're not sure what direction things are going to take.
But
And
nobody is now, you know? Nobody's sure of anything now.
Right, exactly. So there's a lot of fear around, and that has prevented African Americans from participating heavily in the remote parks in particular, where they weren't sure that they'd be safe. So President Obama helped a lot with that. But my sense is we may need a national strategy and really a plan for getting the word out. And I think the urban environments are a place to begin. So we've done some work at Montgomery and other places that attract African Americans, or the King Center, it's a national park, and get people involved there, and then spread the word using those vehicles that there are ways to get out of the city and into those more rural environments. But my sense is that it'd be useful for someone to put together a strategy for doing that, because I'm not sure it will happen naturally, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, I think you're right. And, you know, I'd be interested in being part of that, although I don't necessarily want to lead an effort, because being here in Jamaica, it is so relaxing, I have to tell you. I really have to rouse myself to get anything done, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, I really have never been a fearful person, but I can understand, especially with all that is being revealed now, how vulnerable people have been to the vicissitudes and the hatefulness of other people. But my prayer and my vision of us coming through this is that all of us will know that we belong and be able to take a stand. You know, not if I belong. I am as invested in this world as anyone, and you cannot tell me otherwise. So when people really come to know who they are and to be strong in themselves, I think that is going to change. I'm very hopeful of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Miss Audrey. This is Dante.
Hi, Dante.
Hello. I wanted to ask you the question of the importance of feeling nature versus experiencing it. One thing that I've noticed is my daughter, she's legally blind. So you see me walk.
Your daughter on your shoulder? I can see her. Adorable.
Yeah, we are. So she likes to move around quite a bit. One thing that I noticed is that for her to experience with her sleeping cycles, since that she's blind, the importance of her feeling the sun and feeling nature is just as important to her sleeping cycle than it is being confined to a home. Can you speak to the importance of what that means for family life and for those that may not have the capacity to actually see the splendidness of the splendid?
Wow.
Can you say hello?
Yes, sir, Daddy.
To feel the splendidness versus actually experiencing it with our senses.
Interesting. You know, I have not thought of it in that way before, but I have to tell you, in my spiritual discipline, it is said that the way that you create is through your feeling. The most important creative aspect of your life is how you feel. So I imagine when you take your daughter to the ocean and she can hear the susurrating sound of the waves, right? When you take her to the forest and she can feel the wind, she can rub her hand against the bark of a tree. she can pinch a leaf in her fingers and smell it, you know? I think that when all her other senses are stimulated, and there's a feeling of vastness when you're out in the outdoors, you know?
Yes.
I find that when I'm here and I'm doing my meditation and decrees, we have a couple of dogs, and if they get excited and they start barking and waking up the neighborhood, I try to come inside so as not to be a disturbance. And the feeling I get from being inside is so vastly different from the expansiveness I get from being outside. I was shocked by that. I didn't know that would be true. So I would think that if, you know, in all the ways that you can be outside and enable your daughter to feel, to touch, to hear, to smell, you know, in those ways, the experience becomes more real and vivid for her.
Thank you. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Audrey, this is a little bit of a departure from like, you know, the topic, but I am curious because clearly like one thing that struck me about your description was this spiritual connection that clearly you have with the land and that we all have with the land. So maybe, I mean, you alluded now to your spiritual practice. Maybe you could talk about that. And maybe if for you, there are intersections between your spiritual practice and what you experience when you're out in natural spaces.
Yes. So I have to share this with you. I put it in my book, right? When I was growing up in Jamaica in a little village, right? Every child had to go to church 3 times on Sunday, Monday night, Wednesday night, and Friday night. There was a lot of churching. But I remember when I was about age 10 or so, we got a new pastor, and he was not a particularly literate gentleman. He was very fluent in the Jamaican patois, but not so much in the Queen's English. But then I remember we were in church, and I don't know if you've ever been in a place where you've had this experience or heard of it, but he would get in the spirit and speak in tongues. And speaking in tongues is an entirely foreign language. I mean, I could make nothing of it. But I noticed that whenever he was speaking in tongues and other people were speaking in tongues, there would be an electric energy in the church. It'd be like light a match, it could spark a fire. But the other thing I noticed was that when his name was Brother Foster, when Pastor Foster finished speaking in tongues and then translated, his diction and his language was that of a college professor. He spoke in polysyllabic words. His English was off the charts. So at age 10, I recognized and interpreted that to mean there is something unseen beyond the physical that you can access and bring back truth and beauty and grace. And my spiritual teachings in the Baptist church, you know, I learned that God is love, right? From the moment I learned that God is love, I put away all those ideas about punishment and all of that. And so the connection of God is love, God in nature, God is all of those things are front and center in my mind and my life at all times. So my mother came to visit in Atlanta, and she said to me, "Who is that man you were talking to? He doesn't look like somebody that you would know." I said, "Well, he's a homeless person." But homeless people that don't have homes say the hardest thing for them is that nobody looks at them and nobody talks to them. So, you know, I make a point of looking at everyone and talking to them because that man is God in action. If I am God in action, he's God in action. We all are part of the one. So that's how I try to live my life, giving the oneness to all. The oneness in nature, oneness in spirit, just oneness. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's as close as I can come.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can say I've witnessed Audrey many times, you know, in her communication with people. Sometimes people who were resistant to change. Her partner Frank talks to me a little bit about change. You know, we've had some nice wisdom midday strolls talking about that. And always being open to it. But I've been able to watch her interaction and just that approach of love and God is love and looking at people, and then all of a sudden, these walls that, you know, and certain political figures, etc., who's have, you know, pretty ingrained, encrusted kind of walls, break them down, and all of a sudden watch them laugh. So I appreciate that, and it's been beautiful to see and witness.
Thank you, Francisco. You should see when I want to give people hugs and they're not accustomed to hugs, but I can always tell who's receptive to a hug and who is not. And so I try to put up a little barrier between the people who don't want hugs. And after a while, they start coming to me and say, where's my hug? So, you know, it's just being consistent in who you are. You know, I decided a long time ago that I wasn't going to be one person to the man in the street and one person to the president. You know, I was going to be the same person at all times to everybody, because then I know who I am. Otherwise, I might get confused.
Can I take the opportunity to say something? Hello, Audrey. Yes. What an honor to see you and listen to your story, and how beautiful you presented it with the passion that many people mentioned already. And I just wanted to say two things. So you reminded me of my own experiences with the beautiful places I visited in national parks, like in Ethiopia and Kenya and Brazil, and north of Norway, and different places. And I just kind of, you got me so moved to tears, you know, to remember all of those experiences. And it's been a while for me, and but I still carry them with me. So it feels really beautiful just to be reminded. Thank you.
I'm so glad, and thank you so much for sharing that, because that's the thing, right? Once you've had the experience, it stays with you forever. Have you seen the Northern Lights?
Yes, I have. And the midnight sun. Yeah.
Wow, I haven't yet. I am so wanting to see them.
I wish for you to experience that someday.
Thank you.
And I really agree. I really feel the same way that what you said, that brings a smile to my face and my being, and I carry it with me all the time. And when I see people, I just want to smile to them, and they smile back, and it's just a beautiful way of living, and I love it. And then also during this pandemic in Sweden, I'm a yoga teacher in Sweden, so we've started to have yoga classes outside in the park. Like, we have beautiful parks in the city.
Yes.
Here. And that has been like a profound experience for all the people. And for me, I'm so grateful for that opportunity. And we've been out there, you know, and there are some old trees, beautiful trees surrounding us, and birds singing, and the grass is so green here in the springtime in Sweden. And, you know, words come to me just like you're using now, like you belong here, we belong here. And I use these words, and I see people just, it's been raining, it's been windy, it's been sunny, different weathers, but after class, people are just so smiling. And so that's a beautiful thing, to just come out together in groups and be in the nature, and just, you do the tree pose and you look at another tree in front of you, and it feels amazing. So I just wanted to share. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That is very affirming. And you know, there's this philosopher, he's dead now, Joseph Campbell, right? And he came up with the theory of archetypes. And he says that when you're out in nature, when you're out in the sun, just out, you have no idea how many ways nature is acting upon you. You know, just like the sunflower turns its face to the sun, because nature is acting upon it in so many ways. Nature is calming us, nature is healing us, nature is relaxing us. So what an incredible asset.
Yeah, it's very supportive. Nature.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like this conversation is a really good reminder, you know, how interconnected we are, you know, with the environment. And I think also kind of, I've had a, you know, of course, we all have had like a lot of conversation. I've had a couple conversations recently about how on the one side of the situation, you know, of course, humans are affected and people have died and people are dying today. So that's kind of one side, that's one aspect of the current situation. And, you know, other aspects include, you know, for me, I feel like there's so much medicine in this. Even if you take it to politics and talk about what's on people's lips, okay, of course it's in response to something, But personally, I'm really not separating. You know, people talk about, well, COVID happened, then these protests are happening. I'm like, well, these are part of the same thing. They're not separate.
Wow.
It's in the context. So in the same way that COVID, you know, we've had to kind of go inside. People have had to look at their diets, their habits, how we deal with nature. I'm here in Kenya. I'm seeing some huge birds come around, like what are they? Marabou storks, I think.
Wow.
Danny could help me. Which usually aren't in this, but they're in Nairobi. These are ginormous birds.
Wow.
So I guess my point is that you know, I think that there's a lot of medicine for humans that's also coming out of this time, the way I see it. And I think this reconnection with nature, if not reconnection, like recognition of this interconnectedness that's there, that I feel like we kind of, like you were saying, when you go inside, there's that feeling of shrinking. When you go outside, there's that expansiveness.
Yes.
That awareness is kind of getting invoked in people at this time, or that we're being reminded of certain things. And I think all of these things happening are there's no way I can separate people being vocal from Corona, from, you know, the natural environment kind of, you know, vocalizing itself in certain ways to us. And so I just wanted to offer that it's your talk is really a really deep reminder for me of this interrelatedness that we have with our natural environment.
I so appreciate that. And I completely agree. And when, as people are going through such challenges now and changes, I am reminded, I am continually offering the metaphor of the life cycle of the butterfly, right? You know, the caterpillar, in that part when it's in the pupa and it's struggling, I might not be expressing this right, but it's struggling, right, to break free. And it probably thinks, oh my God, this is so hard, I'm gonna die. It does not know what's on the other side, you know? It does not know that when it comes out, it's gonna be a completely changed creature. And it's gonna be so light and can fly. It leaves behind the cumbersome. And in the context of this metaphor, what I mean by the cumbersome is all the things that have held us back, you know, the separations and the divisions and the inequality. We could conceivably come out of this with the recognition that, oh my God, we all are one aim, one destiny, one planet, one human species. And how about, you know, we love each other as that. So yes, consistent with what you're saying, I am offering that metaphor to people. So no matter how hard it gets, or rather when it gets hard, remember how the caterpillar feels when it's on the verge of breaking free into the butterfly.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
James, welcome.
I think Dad's wanting to talk. You're muted, Dad.
Someone
That's
else.
my dad. Oh, is that something else, or were you talking to us?
Oh, no, I was talking to the group, to the community
Okay,
here.
I just unmuted you. You were muted for a second.
Salim asked the question about the spirituality involved in being in a national park. And it seems to me that one of the things that nature, being out in nature does is it's inherent in nature is to invoke spirit. And it's possible then to capture that in ritual. There was the Kingsley plantation north of Jacksonville was a slave plantation. And there was a slave burial ground was discovered there a few years ago. And adjacent to the slave burial ground is the witness tree. The witness trees were planted by African American slaves to witness the burial space of slaves. And a few years back, a group of descendants of slaves and descendants of slave masters got together in front of the witness tree on this burial ground and had a ceremony that was an African ceremony. And it was one of the most spiritual experiences I've had. It was a quiet, slow, respectful ceremony to remember the slaves and to remember the slave owners and remember the plantation. And something else entered. through the witness tree. And everybody felt, and I mean, I felt it, and people talked about how they felt something else going on there. So
Wow.
there is something profound that's available in these spaces, as long as we're open to them.
As long as we're open. Wow. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Hmm.
I'm also aware that Eric Garner said, "I can't breathe." And about in this country, 113,000 people have said, "I can't breathe." And at a certain level, the earth is saying to us, "I can't breathe."
Yes.
So there's something about the breath,
The breath.
that's being invoked right now in all of this that we, I think, can learn from.
Wow.
That's right. And it's interesting. It's not interesting. I mean, it's appropriate that you mentioned that we, looping back into Synergy, we're planning a retreat, right? An online retreat. And that was, it became apparent to me that having a Black, male American facilitating breathwork workshop right now, that there was a particular power and strength in that, in that act. I mean, this is how we're, at Synergy, one of the ways in which we're choosing to hold space for people at this time is to create platforms like this one for healing, for conversation, safe space, to uplift, and try and, but that particular experience to me feels so relevant right now, to re-engage, to have a Black man from the US re-engage the breath, to hold space for people with breath work.
Very profound.
Yeah. And also, Bryant, it's, when you need breath, just to the etymology, it's, the sanghas that we do on Sundays, they're for inspiration. And, to inspire, to take the breath in. So, during everything, it's like, I was talking to Dante, who's been walking around with his daughter, during these times, he's like, when we reflect, what were you doing during this time? And we've been trying to cultivate inspiration.
Wow. That's deep right there. Wow.
Hi, Audrey. I'm Linda Key.
Hi.
I thank you for your presentation on so many levels. I wanted to share with you some of my reflections. So I'm in Canada, Calgary, which is in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. So the Rocky Mountains goes north, and then it comes up into Canada.
Right.
And there's actually, on a spiritual level, there's a place in the Rocky Mountains, and it's called, it's a beautiful lake in the mountains. It's called Lake Louise, and it's in Banff National Park. And it's, fortunately for me, I'm very close, probably about an hour away from this place. And I don't know where this information comes from, but it's said that Lake Louise is considered energetically as like the heart chakra of the world, of the earth.
Really?
Yeah. So
I visit then.
Yes, I hope you are able to come out to Alberta. I'm in the province of Alberta, and it's a very diverse place. If you go about an hour east of Calgary, there's hoodoos, there's the desert, and there's an area called the Badlands here.
Yes, really?
And, yeah, and they found there's a museum that has dinosaur bones findings called the Royal Tyrrell Museum, and so this has given me the opportunity to reflect on the diversity of the natural spaces and the lands close to where I've been living for the last 5 years. And I also wanted to share my gratitude for that reminder of the fact that we can do actions. When you shared your story of seeing the word national park a few times and it sparked your curiosity, which brought you into action, was a reminder for me that there are, I have the privilege of taking certain actions.
Wow.
And the other guest, Danny, was it Danny, who is also in Kenya?
Yeah.
It's similar, it's a similar situation here in Banff and in the Rockies, that, you know, it can be a very exclusive, touristy kind of environment for people that can afford to go out and enjoy the mountains, enjoy the nature. And so it's really given me a lot more awareness in how I can contribute to making these spaces more inclusive to a diverse set of people, including myself. So,
wonderful.
Thank you.
So great. Thank you. That was wonderful. And I can't believe that you have all of that diversity of terrain, hoodoos, dinosaur fossils, badlands, all in one place nearby. Wow.
Audrey, I'd definitely love to invite you in November to Peru.
I'm down.
Yeah, some parks are pretty much free for the local people. Machu Picchu, like all these parks, the people that are coming from outside the country or from the big cities in the country, they have to pay. So it's just a different dynamic, you know, there, and the appreciation for the local people, because they are still telling the old stories, the folk stories.
Yes.
And yeah, so I invite you in November, you and Frank, just take care of your flight, and you know, I can accommodate everything else for you if you want to come down in November.
Well, with an offer like that, thank you is what I say.
It's the largest. It's the largest variety of microclimates in the world. In Peru. So you know, I know Frank will definitely enjoy the birds there.
We look forward. Thank you so much, Francisco.
Yeah. So I'm just going to, we're gonna continue on. I think I'm gonna stop the recording here, Fran. We're at about an hour and a half, but that doesn't mean the session ends. So we just officially end it. This gets posted to our site, our website. And please feel free to share any of the sanghas with people who you think might be interested. You can share the links. Thank you so much for coming. We're just ending the kind of official recording, and then we'll continue to chat.
I'm gonna sign off, Salim, and if you don't mind, Audrey, I'll